I asked who Dan was. She said I was insecure and controlling. So I stopped controlling everything, including the mortgage payment. People always want to know where the real beginning was. The text from Dan wasn't it. That was just the moment the curtain slipped. The beginning was quieter, boring even. It started with Sarah smiling more at her phone than she ever smiled at me. We'd been married 7 years, together for 9. No kids. 2-story house in a suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I'm a project manager for a commercial construction firm, which is a fancy way of saying I spend my days keeping a bunch of electricians, plumbers, and architects from killing each other. Long hours, decent money, not glamorous. Sarah did social media marketing from home. Flexible schedule, lots of strategy calls and content sprints, and an unlimited ability to be on her phone at all times without anyone telling her to knock it off. When it was good, she'd send me memes during the day, ask about my meetings, send photos of the dog sleeping in weird positions. When it started going bad, the memes stopped. The photos stopped. What didn't stop was the glow of her screen. One Tuesday evening in early spring, I came home a little after 7. It had been a 10-hour day, topped off with a screaming match between a supplier and my foreman that I got to referee. The sky was still faintly light, that gray-blue that never quite commits to night. I walked into our kitchen in my steel-toe boots and a shirt still marked by drywall dust. Sarah was leaning against the counter, phone in hand, thumb moving like a metronome. She didn't look up when I came in. "Hey," I said, setting my keys in the bowl by the door. They clinked against the ceramic. No response. I stepped closer. "Hey." She blinked, then glanced up like I'd interrupted a broadcast. "Oh, hey, sorry, I was answering Jenna." Jenna is our friend, married to my buddy Mark. Solid woman, good sense of humor, absolutely the type who texts but doesn't need 3-minute response times. "Everything okay?" I asked, hanging my jacket. "Yeah, she was just showing me this thing. You know what? It's not important." She hit the side button on her phone and set it face down on the counter. It lasted exactly 8 seconds before it buzzed, and she flipped it right back over. I looked around the kitchen. Empty stovetop. A grocery bag on the table with a rotisserie chicken in it, still in its plastic container. "Did you eat already?" I asked. "I picked up chicken. I figured you'd be late and I didn't know if you were hungry." Her eyes were on the phone, not the food, as she talked. "Okay," I said, "thanks." We ate standing up, each picking at the chicken with forks straight from the drawer. She'd scroll, laugh at something on her screen, lock it when I glanced over, then unlock it as soon as I looked away. It was like being in a room with someone who kept slipping into a different conversation you weren't invited to. "If I'm that boring, you can invite whoever you're texting to dinner," I said finally, half a joke, half not. She rolled her eyes. "Don't start, Chris, I'm just talking to people." "People or a person?" I asked. "You sound jealous," she said, like it was a diagnosis. I shrugged. Maybe I just sound like someone who likes being looked at while he's talking. She let out a little breath through her nose. "You know, not everything is about you needing constant validation." I raised an eyebrow. The word choice was new. Validation. "Yeah," she speared a piece of chicken. "My therapist says you have a really strong need for external reassurance. It's fine, it's just a lot sometimes." I hadn't known we were bringing her therapist into dinner. I also hadn't known I was on the menu. "I thought you went to therapy for anxiety," I said carefully. "I do," she said, "and relationships are part of that." I turned that over in my head, chalked it up to her latest podcast. I let it go. That was the pattern back then. Notice something, minimize it, move on. It didn't get better. The late nights started a few weeks later. First it was drinks with the girls on Thursdays, then Thursdays and Saturdays. Then networking happy hours that somehow ended with her stumbling through the front door at 2:15 in the morning, smelling like tequila and someone else's cologne. The first time she came home that late, I was half asleep on the couch, TV on mute, dog at my feet. The digital clock on the cable box said 2:07. The door opened, and she came in laughing at something on her phone, stopped when she saw me upright. "Oh, you're awake," she said, voice flattening. "Hard to sleep when the person who lives here isn't home," I replied, sitting up. She kicked off her heels, winced the way women do when they've been standing too long in bad shoes. "I texted you I'd be late." "You texted at 9 you'd be home by 11, I said. "I called you at midnight, straight to voicemail." She groaned, tossing her bag on the chair. "My phone died, can I live?" "You have 3 portable chargers," I said. "You sell portable chargers to other people on Instagram." She made a face like I'd just quoted a manual at her. "You're being intense." "I'm being awake at 2 in the morning, I said. "There's a difference." She waved a hand, already walking past me toward the stairs. "Chris, you're suffocating me. Not everything I do has to be reported to you. I'm not a teenager with a curfew." "I didn't say you had a curfew," I said, standing up now. "I said call if you're going to be 3 hours later than you said. That's basic courtesy, not parole conditions." She stopped halfway up the stairs and turned, gripping the railing. "This is exactly what my therapist was talking about. You're projecting your trauma onto me." I blinked. "My trauma," I repeated slowly. "Which trauma are we talking about here?" "Your parents splitting up, the way your mom never knew where your dad was, all that," she said, waving vaguely. "You panic if I'm not exactly where you expect me to be." "My mom didn't know where my dad was because he'd disappear for weeks with other women and empty bank accounts," I said. "Asking you to answer a text so I know you're safe is not the same thing." She snorted. "Safe, that's cute. Just admit you're jealous and move on." She went upstairs without waiting for an answer. The dog thumped his tail against my leg, confused by the raised voices. I sat back down on the couch, tried to watch the rest of whatever show was on, failed. That was the first time I heard suffocating and projecting in the same sentence. It wasn't the last. 2 weeks later, we were at Mark and Jenna's for a backyard barbecue. Early summer now. Fireflies starting to show up around the tree line. Kids running around with glow sticks. The smell of charcoal and lighter fluid and somebody's uncle's cigar drifting over the fence. Mark handed me a beer and nodded toward where Sarah was by the patio table, head bent over her phone, laughing way too hard at something she wasn't sharing. "She's been on that thing all night," he said. "She's social," I said, making air quotes with the hand not holding my bottle. "Social as in social media or social as in someone named?" He let it trail off. "Don't know yet," I said. He gave me a side-eye. "You good?" Mark has that straightforward cop gaze even though he isn't one. Industrial safety manager, close enough. "I'm paying a mortgage and sleeping next to a woman who's in a relationship with Verizon," I said. "Define good." He huffed a laugh. "You talk to her?" "Yeah, I get told I'm controlling and need to do my own inner work." Jenna joined us then, sliding an arm around Mark's waist. "Who needs inner work?" "Apparently Chris," Mark said, "because he wants his wife to answer texts at 2 in the morning." Jenna's eyebrows went up. She looked over at Sarah, then back at me. "She really said that?" I shrugged. "She says a lot of things." Jenna chewed her lip. "She's one of those people who will tell you the truth even if it makes the room awkward." "I love Sarah, you know that," she began, "which is always how you know a criticism is coming. But if you were out until 2 and didn't answer her, what would she say?" I didn't even have to imagine it. She'd track my phone location and show up wherever I was with a speech about emotional safety. "So," Jenna said gently, "then that's not you being controlling. That's just her not wanting to be accountable." I watched Sarah throw her head back at something on her screen, the light of it making her face look almost theatrical in the dusk. She wasn't talking to anybody physically there. Everyone around her was in some other tab. I tell myself it's just a phase, I said. Phases don't usually come with vocabulary lists, Mark muttered. I laughed once, short. She started therapy for anxiety. Somehow I ended up as the diagnosis. We left the barbecue around 10. On the drive home, Sarah was on her phone in the passenger seat, screen angled away from me. "You have fun?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, scrolling. "Jenna's in a weird mood, though." "Weird how?" She asked if I was okay like 3 times. Sarah snagged the word in the air with her fingers. It was judgy. "Maybe she's just checking in," I said. "She's projecting her stuff onto me," Sarah said immediately. "She and Mark are codependent as hell. They can't stand to be apart for 5 minutes." "They seem happy," I said. "Yeah, happy in their little bubble," she laughed under her breath. "I'm not wired like that. I need freedom." She went quiet after that, thumbs moving, screen lighting up her face. At the next red light, her phone buzzed with a notification. "Dan, you make everything more fun." I read it upside down before it disappeared behind a new message bubble. Another one popped up. "Dan, still thinking about earlier." She tilted the screen away, thumb flying, cheeks flushing a little. Not the embarrassed kind, the excited kind. "Who's Dan?" I asked, my voice very calm, too calm. She jerked her head up, eyes wide for a split second before narrowing. "Excuse me." "Who's Dan?" I repeated. "He seems to think you make everything more fun." "You're reading my messages now," she demanded. "They're in 48-point font in my lap," I said. "I'd have to close my eyes not to see them." Her mouth flattened. "He's just a guy from my parking space. We collaborate on campaigns sometimes." "Does the collaboration usually come with winky faces?" I asked. "Is that a new part of the strategy?" "Wow," she said. "Okay, this is what we're doing now." "What we're doing," I said slowly, "is I asked you a basic question about a man I've never heard of who's texting you at 10:30 that he's still thinking about earlier. And you're more offended that I saw it than you are interested in explaining it." "You're being insecure and controlling," she snapped. "Seriously, Chris, it's gross." I let the word hang there. Insecure. That's the one that sticks to men like me. Men who don't cry at movies, who fix the leaky sink themselves, who still, apparently, can be called insecure because they notice a pattern. "Insecure," I repeated, tasting it. "Yes," she folded her arms. "You're trying to police who I talk to, what I do, where I go. That's not love, it's possession." The light turned green. I drove. "I'm not telling you who you can talk to," I said evenly. "I'm asking who I'm effectively sharing my wife with." "You're not sharing me with anyone," she said. "I am my own person." "I know that," I replied. "I'm the one who married you, not adopted you." She rolled her eyes again. "You don't get it. You've got these old-school ideas about marriage where if a woman laughs with a man, you immediately assume she's cheating. You have entire Instagram stories about emotional cheating. If a man likes another woman's pictures," I said. "I'm just trying to play by your rules." "That's different," she shot back. "How?" "Because you're a man," she said, as if that explained quantum mechanics. There are arguments you can win and arguments that are designed so you can't. This was the latter. I saw it then, even if I didn't want to. "I'm not going to scream at you in the car," I said. "We'll talk at home." "We're not talking about this," she said quickly. "You need to talk to someone about your insecurity. This," she gestured between us, "is you projecting your trauma onto me again." That phrase like a gavel. We drove the rest of the way in silence. At home, she went straight upstairs. I sat at the kitchen table with the stack of mail I hadn't opened in a few days. Credit card offers, a flyer for gutter cleaning, our gas bill. I flipped through, some part of me hoping an envelope would say, "Here's the manual for what to do when your wife calls you controlling for asking who Dan is." No such luck. The thing about being accused of being controlling is it makes you painfully aware of every decision you make. I hesitated to even ask if she wanted tea because it felt like one more opportunity to be called suffocating. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened, kissed my cheek distractedly while texting someone, waved as I left for work, phone already back in her hand. At lunch, I sat in my truck in a job site parking lot, construction dust swirling in the air. I stared at my sandwich, didn't taste it. I opened my own phone and against every masculine script I'd been handed, Googled, "Am I controlling for wanting my wife to text me when she's out?" I scrolled through articles, forum posts, women saying, "If he doesn't want to text you back, he doesn't care." Men saying, "If she won't tell you where she is, something's off." I booked a therapy appointment for myself that afternoon, not because I believed her diagnosis, but because I wanted someone neutral to tell me if I was losing my grip on reality. The therapist was a quiet man in his 50s named Dr. Patel, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. He asked why I was there. I told him. "So your wife says you're suffocating and controlling," he summarized. "What do you actually do when she's out late?" "I text once asking what time she thinks she'll be home," I said. "If she doesn't answer, I call once around midnight to make sure she's alive. Last week I asked her who a man was that she's been texting constantly." "And how often are these late nights?" he asked. "Once or twice a week lately," I said. "Home after 2. She used to hate staying out past 11. He nodded slowly. "Do you go out late like this?" "No," I said. "I get up at 6 most days, and I'm the one driving after we go out drinking usually. I don't like feeling like crap at work." "Has she given you any reason, apart from these nights, to mistrust her?" he asked. I thought of the texts, the angle of her phone, the new lock screen code I wasn't allowed to know because adults are allowed privacy, the Dan messages I'd seen. "Yes," I said. "She's emotionally somewhere else. All the time. I feel like a roommate she occasionally posts for husband appreciation content." He didn't rush to respond. "Chris, I want to be clear about something," he said finally. "Asking your spouse to communicate basic information about their whereabouts is not controlling. It's relational. Concern for their safety and for the health of the relationship is not pathology." "So I'm not crazy," I said. "I didn't say that," he joked, and I actually laughed. "But from what you've described so far, your expectations sound reasonable. Now, if you were tracking her phone without her consent, reading her emails, forbidding her from seeing people, that would be controlling." "I haven't done any of that," I said. "Then the question becomes," he went on, "why does she experience basic accountability as suffocation? And secondly, why are you staying in a relationship where your needs are being framed as defects?" That sentence sat in my chest for days. Why are you staying in a relationship where your needs are being framed as defects? I told myself I was staying because marriage is work, because everyone has issues, because this might just be a rough patch. Then I found the hotel receipt. It was a Tuesday night. I got home around 6, earlier than usual because a site visit had been canceled. Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway. The house was quiet in that church basement way, chairs, crumbs, nobody. I took off my boots, fed the dog, threw my work shirt straight in the hamper in the laundry room. When I opened the hamper lid, something white slipped from a pocket and fluttered to the floor. I picked it up. It was one of those thin, heat-printed receipts that's already starting to fade. Marriott logo at the top. Check-in, 11:38 a.m. checkout, 3:09 p.m. room number 417. Guest, Sarah Miller. Date 2 weeks ago. A Tuesday. I remembered that day because she'd told me she had a deep work session at a parking space downtown and would be unreachable for a few hours. I studied the line items: room charge, room service, lunch for 2. The receipt crackled a little in my fingers. Now, there are a few realities you run through in a moment like that. 1. she could have booked the room to get away from distractions. 2. She could have had a work meeting there. 3. She could have a medically necessary reason to need a hotel room in the middle of a workday that involved lunch for 2. You list them out, you try them on, and if you're honest, there's usually one reality that sits heavier than the rest. I folded the receipt and put it on the washer. I didn't take a picture. I didn't snap and send it to friends. I just stood there and felt something very simple click. Not a shout, not a wound, a switch. When she came home an hour later, she was in yoga pants and a tank top, hair in a messy bun, like she'd just come from the gym. Phone in her hand, of course. "Hey," she said, breezing past me to open the fridge. "You're home early." "Site visit got moved," I said. "How was your day?" "Productive," she said, grabbing a sparkling water. "I went to that new coworking place near the river. It's got these focus rooms, totally game-changing, no distractions." "Nice," I said. "Those rooms come with beds and room service now." She froze for half a beat. Not long. If I hadn't known her so well, I might have missed it. Then she straightened, turned, and gave me an annoyed look. "What are you talking about?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just held up the receipt. Color drained just enough from her face to confirm what I already knew. "Oh my God," she said, throwing her head back. "You went through my stuff again." "It fell out of your pocket," I said. "Laundry isn't going through your stuff. It's literally handling your stuff. Also, that's not the part of this that's alarming." She snatched the receipt from my hand, crumpled it, and tossed it toward the trash, missing. "You are insane." "So tell me the non-insane explanation," I said, voice calm. "Because to me it looks like you got a hotel room for 3.5 hours on a Tuesday, with lunch for 2. She scoffed. "It was a focus room. They comped the food from the lobby restaurant. It's not a big deal." "They comped lunch for 2 people," I said. "Did your deep work require a partner?" She gave me that pitying look that had started creeping in more and more, like I was a child who'd failed to understand a magic trick. "You are reading so far into this. I can't even deal." "It's right there, Sarah," I said quietly. "You can call me controlling, jealous, whatever label you want. The facts are, you're out late, you're secretive, you're getting cute texts from Dan, and now there's a hotel room in the middle of a workday. If this were my receipt, what would you be thinking?" She hesitated. For half a second the mask dropped and I saw a flicker of something like guilt. Then the walls slammed back up. "I would trust my husband," she said, "because I'm not a paranoid psycho." "You would burn my clothes in the yard," I said. "Let's both not lie." She pressed her palms into her eyes. "I can't live like this. Every move I make is scrutinized. It's exhausting." "Then make different moves," I said. "Ones you're not ashamed to explain." "I am not doing this," she said suddenly, sharp. "My therapist told me I do not have to participate in every argument I'm invited to. This is a you problem. Work on your insecurities." She grabbed her sparkling water and walked out, bare feet squeaking slightly on the tile. I watched her go, felt the anger try to rise up like it always did. Then I noticed something. It wasn't rising. I wasn't hot, I wasn't shaking, I was clear. Everyone thinks the breaking point is loud. Mine was eerily quiet. I picked up the crumpled receipt from the floor, smoothed it, and slipped it into my wallet. Not because I wanted to wave it around later, but because I wanted a physical reminder that I hadn't imagined it. Choices have invoices. That was one of my dad's few useful sayings. He didn't always pay his, but he was right that they existed. That night I didn't argue with Sarah about where she'd been. I didn't beg, plead, or scroll through her phone. I lay in bed next to her, watched the light from her screen paint the ceiling, and started doing math. Not numbers, logistics. Our mortgage was in my name. We de-bought the house with money from an inheritance my grandmother left me. The deed was joint, per her insistence once we got married, but the loan, the actual obligation to the bank, that was me. Her car loan, technically, was in her name, but I was the one who'd set up and paid the auto draft every month. Most of the bills came out of the joint account that my paycheck mostly funded. I'd been controlling the finances, if you wanted to call it that, by making sure nothing bounced and everything was paid on time. She'd call that financial control. I'd called it being an adult. If she wanted freedom so badly, maybe it was time to hand her the reins she kept accusing me of gripping too tightly. The next day at lunch, I called a lawyer. Divorce attorneys' offices all smell the same, I've decided. Like coffee, anxiety, and cheap carpet cleaner. The woman I met with, Melissa, was in her 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, but her voice was warm. She listened without interrupting as I laid it out. The late nights, the Dan texts, the hotel, the gaslighting wrapped in therapy buzzwords. When I finished, she tapped her pen on a legal pad. So you don't have concrete proof of a physical affair, she said, but you have a strong suspicion. Correct, I said, and honestly, even if nothing else happened yet, this contempt. I gestured vaguely, searching for the word. I don't know if I want to stick around for the full show. You don't need cheating to justify leaving a marriage, she said. You're allowed to leave because you're being disrespected. But from a legal standpoint, infidelity can impact certain things in certain states. In Ohio, it can, but not dramatically unless there are financial ramifications. Financial like hotel rooms? I asked dryly. She smiled thinly. Potentially, but let me ask you this, what do you actually want right now? Separation, divorce, leverage? I thought about it. I want peace, I said. I want to stop feeling like the bad guy in my own house because I notice what's right in front of me. I want her to either be all in or all the way out, and I'm done trying to convince her to pick the first one. She nodded. Okay, so we talk strategy. She laid things out plainly. If we separated, what happened to the house, the accounts, her car, my retirement, spousal support possibilities given she technically worked but made much less. Look, Chris, she said eventually, leaning forward. You are in a stronger position than you feel. You've been the primary earner. Most debts are in your name. That's a risk, but also leverage. What you need to do is protect yourself. Quietly. What does that look like? I asked. She slid a piece of paper toward me, a checklist. Separate bank account. Move half of the joint savings into it. Change direct deposit so my paycheck went there instead. Take my name off any purely discretionary charges that were more hers than ours. Stop paying for anything that wasn't essential to my own stability. You're not hiding money, she said. You're ensuring you're not left with all the liability if she decides to set things on fire out of spite. Don't do anything vindictive. Do everything protective. We talked about the mortgage. If I just stop paying it, I said slowly, thinking of my hook line, will that hurt her or just both of us? Both, Melissa said immediately. Don't sabotage your own credit to make a point. What you can do is this. Inform her in writing that as of a certain date, you will no longer be solely responsible for the mortgage. If she wants to keep the house, she can refinance in her name or buy out your share, or you sell and split equity. In writing, I repeated. Email, she said, paper trail, calm, factual, no emotion. I nodded. I walked out of that office with a folder under my arm and a different spine under my skin. My back felt straighter, my shoulders looser. It wasn't revenge I was carrying. It was clarity. Over the next 2 weeks, I stopped controlling things. I opened a new checking account at a different bank and moved half of our joint savings there. I rerouted my paycheck. I left enough in the joint to cover 1 more month of bills. I logged into the bank dashboard for the car that Sarah drove every day to Pilates and happy hour. The loan was in her name. I just set up the auto pay from our joint account. I canceled that draft and set a reminder on my phone titled Freedom Test for the due date. I stopped doing her laundry. I washed my clothes, folded them, put them away. Her hamper overflowed quietly in the corner. I stopped cooking dinner for us. I cooked for me. If she was home and wanted to eat, I'd plate some for her without comment. If she wasn't, the leftovers went in a container with my name on it into the fridge. She started ordering DoorDash more. I stopped reminding her of appointments. Dentist, vet, hair. If she missed them, she missed them. I didn't announce any of this. I just let go. It wasn't punishment. It was a practical experiment in autonomy. She noticed, of course. One evening, about a week into Operation Hands Off, she stood in the laundry room holding an empty bottle of detergent. "Did you seriously not get more?" she demanded. "I got more," I said, looking up from the email I was reading on my phone. "It's on the shelf." "There's none in here," she said, shaking the bottle at me. "That's fabric softener," I said. "The detergent is next to my hamper." "Next to your, why would you put it there?" she asked, annoyed. "Because I'm the one using it," I said. "You said you needed more space, remember? Consider this your detergent journey." She stared at me like I'd spoken Portuguese. "What is your problem lately?" she asked. "You've been so distant, it's like you checked out." "I stopped controlling everything," I said mildly, "per your request." "That's not what I meant and you know it," she snapped. "Maybe be more specific next time," I said, going back to my phone. She stomped out. A minute later, I heard the front door slam. 10 minutes after that, an Amazon cart checkout noise from her phone downstairs. Same-day delivery detergent, probably. The day the car note came due, the reminder pinged my phone at 9 a.m. I saw it, silenced it, and went back to reviewing a project bid. At 5 p.m. my phone buzzed again. "Sarah." "Why is my car payment app saying past due?" she demanded as soon as I answered. "Because it's past due," I said. "Did you forget to pay it?" she asked, already accusing. "I canceled the autopay last month," I said. "It's in your name, your car, your bill." "But we've always paid it from the joint," she said, like she was correcting a child. "And you drive it," I said evenly. "I've been controlling the finances for 7 years. I'm stepping back. This is me trusting you to handle your own responsibilities." "You can't just decide that without talking to me," she exclaimed. "I just did," I said. "I sent you an email about it actually. Check your inbox." She huffed. "This is financial abuse." There it was, a new vocabulary level unlocked. "No," I said calmly. "Financial abuse would be me draining the accounts and leaving you without resources. I moved half the savings, which is legally mine, into a separate account. I left enough in joint to cover last month's bills. I told you in writing what I was doing and why. What you're experiencing now is the absence of my subsidy." "God, listen to yourself," she said. "You're punishing me." "Wrong word," I said quietly. "I'm protecting myself. Whether you experience that as punishment is up to you." She went silent. I heard her breathing on the other end, short, rapid. "This is because of Dan, isn't it?" she said finally. "This is because of a pattern," I said. "Dan is just a symptom, like the hotel, like the nights out, like the way you talk to me when I try to bring any of it up." "I said I would set better boundaries with him," she said, almost whining. "You're overreacting." I thought of her never actually saying those words. Of her saying, "I'll be more careful so you don't spiral," which was not the same thing. "Sarah," I said, "choices have invoices. You run up a bill on disrespect. You don't get to be shocked when I stop paying for the lifestyle that lets you rack it up." "You are so cold," she spat. "I match temperature," I said. "You taught me that." I hung up before she could answer. That night she came home earlier than usual. No girls' night, no drinks. She cooked, actual pots and pans clanging, the smell of garlic filling the house. It was like seeing a ghost perform domesticity. "I made pasta," she said, setting a plate in front of me at the table. "Thanks," I said. "Smells good." We ate. It was almost normal. Halfway through, she put her fork down. "I feel like we've gotten off track," she said, looking at her plate. Off track, I repeated. Yeah, she said. We've been snapping at each other. You're being different, distant. I don't like it. You don't like me not begging, I said, not unkindly, just saying it. That's not fair, she said quickly. What would you call it then? I asked mildly, different word. She glared. My therapist says you're shutting down instead of engaging. Your therapist sure has a lot of diagnoses for someone she's never met, I said. Did she ever tell you that you're weaponizing her words to avoid looking at your own behavior? She went quiet, her jaw worked. You're making me the bad guy, she said finally. I'm making a list, I said. The behavior goes on it, the labels are up to you. The behavior, she sneered. The behavior. God, you sound like my dad. How's his marriage going? I asked. She pushed her chair back hard enough that it scraped. I'm trying here, she said. I cooked. I came home early. I'm making an effort, and you're just doing this cold thing. I see the effort, I said, nodding. I also see the phone still glued to your hand every other minute of the day. I see you hiding screens, coming home at 2 a.m., calling me controlling for asking who a man is. You don't fix a cracked foundation with one nice dinner, Sarah. You fix it by not hitting it with a hammer every weekend. You're impossible, she said and stormed upstairs. I finished my pasta, washed my plate, wrote an email. Subject: mortgage and next steps. Sarah, per our ongoing issues and my need to protect myself financially, I wanted to be clear about how the mortgage will be handled going forward. As of July 1, I will no longer be solely responsible for the mortgage payment. The house is in both our names. The obligation should reflect that. We have 3 options. 1. You refinance the mortgage into your name and take over the payments. 2. We sell the house and split the equity. 3. We formalize a separation and determine an arrangement through attorneys. This is not a threat. It's a boundary. I am no longer willing to fund a lifestyle where I am treated with contempt. Chris. I read it 3 times. No anger, no adjectives beyond contempt. Factual. I sent it. 2 days later, she replied with 1 sentence. We are not selling this house, so you can run away from your issues. I didn't respond. That was the day I printed the separation papers Melissa had drafted and put them in a plain manila envelope. Fast forward to the night, everything fell apart. It was a Friday. Sarah was supposed to be at a women in business mixer downtown. I got home around 6, took a shower, shaved, put on a clean shirt that wasn't work-stained. I cooked salmon and roasted vegetables, set the table, lit a candle, not for romance, for formality. At 7, I texted her, dinner at home at 8. I want to talk, not a fight. She replied a minute later. I'm at an event. Can we do this later? I typed, then deleted 3 different responses. Finally, I sent, I'll be here till 9. At 8:45, headlights swung through the front window. She came in at 8:50, smelling like perfume and wine, heels in her hand this time. What is this? She asked, seeing the table. Dinner, I said. Sit down. I told you I have. You told me you'd be home later, I said. It's later, sit. Something in my tone must have registered. She sat. We ate in silence for a few minutes. She kept starting sentences and abandoning them like shopping carts. Finally, she put her fork down. Are you going to say something? She asked. Yes, I said. I wiped my mouth with my napkin, set it down, and reached for the envelope on the sideboard. I've been thinking a lot about the words you've used about me the last few months, I said. Insecure, controlling, suffocating, projecting. She crossed her arms. Defensive posture textbook. If you're going to do this, at least own your part. I am, I said. My part is staying in something that's been making me feel small. That's on me. My part is trying to talk to you about it and accepting being called names instead of leaving. That's also on me. I slid the envelope across the table. It made a soft whisper against the wood. What's that? She asked, not touching it. Separation papers, I said. I had a lawyer draw them up. She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You're being dramatic. Different sport, I said. That's clarity. You're not serious, she said. I am, I said. Her eyes searched my face for a hint of a grin, a twitch, anything to show I was bluffing. She didn't find one. You're throwing away 7 years because I went to a hotel one time to work, she demanded. I'm ending a one-sided contract because for the last year you've acted like I'm a prison guard instead of a partner, I said. The hotel is a data point. The late nights, the Dan texts, the way you talk to me, that's the pattern. She pushed the envelope back toward me. No, I'm not signing this. You don't have to tonight, I said. You should have a lawyer look at it, but understand something, this isn't a negotiation. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you where the line is. You can't just decide to blow up our life without me having a say, she said, voice rising. I'm not blowing it up, I said quietly. I'm stepping out of the fire you keep adding gasoline to. She stood up, chair scraping again. This is insane. You love me. You've said you love me 1,000,000 times. You're going to throw that away because you got in your head about some texts. I do love you, I said. I just finally love myself more. She scoffed. Oh my God, did your therapist feed you that line? No, I said. Life did. You're overreacting, she said again, desperate now. I can set boundaries with Dan. I'll stop going out so much. I held up a hand. She stopped mid-plea. I don't want promises made at a table with papers between us, I said. We're past that. We've had that conversation. You cried, you said you'd try, and then you did it again. And again. I'm not doing that cycle anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes. This was new, the anger I'd seen, the contempt, the smugness. The tears were a fresh card. So you're just done, she said, voice trembling. Yes, I said. I'm done living with someone who treats basic respect like a favor. I'm done explaining to a grown woman why you don't disappear till 2 in the morning without a text. I'm done being told my very reasonable discomfort is trauma and insecurity. She sat down slowly, like her legs had given out. She picked at the envelope as if it might burn her. What about the house? She whispered. I emailed you, I said. As of next month, I'm not controlling the mortgage either. We either list it, you refinance, or we work out an arrangement through lawyers. But I'm not going to keep paying for you to live here while you pretend you're single. You would make me homeless, she said, tears slipping now. I would make you responsible for your choices, I said gently. There's a difference. You work, you have options, you have a family who can help if you ask. And I'm not kicking you out tonight. We'll figure out logistics. But the era of you living in a nice house on my dime while treating me like an inconvenience is over. You'll regret this, she said, latching onto a new script. You're acting out of anger. I'm not angry, I said. Anger is hot, this is cold, final. You're throwing everything away, she repeated, as if by saying it enough she could rewind time. I'm throwing away the version of us where my needs only count if they match your convenience, I said. Turns out, I don't miss that as much as you think I will. She stared at me for a long moment. Then quietly, is there someone else? I almost laughed. That's rich. I need to know if this is about another woman, she said. Because if that's the case, then you're just projecting your guilt onto me. There it is again, I said. Projecting. No, Sarah, there's no one else. I'm not leaving you for another person. I'm leaving you for another version of myself that doesn't settle for this. She pressed her lips together, wiped under her eyes with a knuckle. She looked small in that moment, not the confident, therapy-armed woman who'd been lecturing me for months, just a scared human facing the consequences of her own bets. What happens now? She asked finally. Now, I said, you call a lawyer or don't, that's your choice. We figure out a timeline for separating. I'll sleep in the guest room starting tonight. We stop pretending we're okay. She sniffed. And what, we just live like roommates until this is over? We've been living like roommates for a while, I said. This just makes it honest. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I hadn't. I hadn't raised my voice the entire time. I hadn't shattered a plate, punched a wall, called her names. That's the part that rattled her, I think. The calm. This is insane, she said again, but it sounded smaller. I need to think. Take your time, I said. Logistics only from this point, though. I'm not relitigating the past with you. I'm done debating my right to have boundaries. She stood up, grabbed the envelope, and stormed upstairs. A minute later, I heard drawers opening and closing, the rustle of a suitcase, zippers. I cleaned the table, blew out the candle, put the leftovers away. The normal tasks done with a strange lightness in my chest. 20 minutes later, she came down with a duffel bag and her purse. Eyes red, jaw set. Where are you going? I asked. To Jenna S., she said. I need space. Okay, I said. Text me when you get there so I know you're safe. She stared at me. You're funny. I'm serious, I said. If we're doing this, we might as well do it with basic courtesy. She rolled her eyes, but an hour later my phone buzzed. At Jenna S. I replied with a simple, thank you. That was the last emotional text I sent her. The next few days were a blur of logistics. I moved my clothes into the guest room. I gathered important documents, tax returns, bank statements, the deed, and put them in a file box. I met with Melissa again, brought her up to speed. She took the papers, I said. I don't know if she's actually going to sign them. She may not be ready yet, Melissa said. You keep moving forward. File for separation if you're comfortable. Let her catch up or not. I also called a real estate agent. We walked through the house I'd thought we'd grow old in, talking about staging and comps and strong market and clean lines. Beautiful place, she said. You must love it here. I did, I said. The echo's gotten loud, though. Sarah came back on Sunday to get more clothes. Jenna texted me ahead of time. She's coming by. I'll wait in the car out front in case. I appreciated that. Witnesses make things cleaner. When Sarah walked in, she looked tired. Makeup smudged, hair in a sloppy bun. She avoided looking directly at the guest room door at the missing section of my closet. So this is really happening, she said, standing in the living room. Yes, I said. You already moved out of our room, she accused. I moved out of your room, I corrected gently. Words matter. You're so cruel, she whispered. No, I said, I'm just fluent now. We went over practicalities. What furniture she wanted if we sold, which bills were due when, how we'd handle the dog for now. She tried 3 separate times to pull us back into feelings talk. I didn't follow. At one point she said, I just don't understand how you can be so calm. I shrugged slightly. I was loud for a year, I said. You called it drama. Consider this the quiet version. Over the next month, the machine of separation cranked slowly to life. Papers were filed. The agent took photos. There were showings. Sarah dragged her feet, then sped up, then dragged again. Her calls came in emotional phases. Phase 1 was anger. You blindsided me, she said on one call. You've been planning this behind my back. I've been planning how to protect myself, I said. Your behavior has been telling me where this was heading for a long time. I just finally believed it. Everyone fights, she said. Everyone doesn't get hotel rooms on Tuesdays with men named Dan, I replied. We're not the same. Clicking. Phase 2 was bargaining. I can change, she said a week later, voice softer. I'll block him, I'll stop going out so much. I'll invite you to things. We can go to therapy, together, I mean. We could have done that a year ago, I said. When I asked, right after you called me controlling for being hurt, you didn't want therapy then, you wanted compliance. I was scared, she said, of losing freedom, of becoming like my mom. Your mom has a husband who comes home every night and loves her, I said. You ran from being her and ran straight past me. That's not fair, she murmured. It's accurate, I said. Look, I'm not saying you're a monster. I'm saying we are not compatible with the version of you that needs to feel free more than she needs to be a partner. So that's just it, she asked. No second chances. You've burned through more chances than my bank gives overdrafts, I said. I'm not a credit line. Choices have invoices. We're at collection. Silence, then you're heartless. No, I said. I just stopped outsourcing my self-respect. Phase 3 was nostalgia. Do you remember that cabin trip we took our second year? She texted one night. We were so happy. I don't know how we got here. I stared at the message on my screen, sitting in the small one-bedroom apartment I'd rented 10 minutes from work. My clothes in one closet, my tools in the hall, peace humming in the background like a quiet appliance. I typed and deleted twice. Finally, I wrote. I remember, we were both telling the truth back then. Now we're not. That's the difference. She replied with a sad face emoji. I didn't answer. The first night alone in my own place, I sat on the couch and waited for the wave of panic I'd been warned would come. The crushing loneliness, the regret. It didn't, I felt, empty in a way that felt like a cleared shelf, not a theft. I ordered a pizza, watched a game, slept 8 hours straight for the first time in months, woke up and made coffee exactly the way I like it, no one critiquing how much sugar I used or whether I should try oat milk. Peace isn't dramatic, it's just the absence of stupid. Of course, the world doesn't pause for your personal crises. Work kept going. My crew still needed schedules, inspections still needed lining up. Mark and Jenna invited me over a few times. One Sunday afternoon, I sat on their deck while Mark grilled and their toddler drew chalk suns on the concrete. How you holding up? Mark asked, flipping burgers. I thought I'd be more broken, I said honestly. I'm sad, yeah, but it's quieter than I expected. That's what happens when you leave a storm, he said. Silence feels like a luxury. Jenna came out with a bowl of salad. Saw Sarah's latest post, she said carefully. Oh, I asked, taking a sip of my beer. She put up one of those leaving toxic relationships is an act of self-love quotes, Jenna said. Vague captioned it about choosing herself. I snorted, of course she did. And Dan commented a bunch of heart emojis, Jenna added, subtle as a freight train. Mark shook his head. You okay hearing that? I'm fine, I said, and I was. It just confirms I wasn't imagining it. Jenna studied me. You know she's telling people you were financially abusive, right? I figured, I said. I stopped paying for her car and told her she had to share the mortgage. To someone who's never carried a bill in her life, that probably feels abusive. Do you want us to correct people? She asked. Only if they ask directly, I said. I'm not running PR on this. I know what happened, you two know. My lawyer knows that's enough. You're a bigger person than me, Mark muttered. No, I said, I'm just tired. The house sold 3 months after we listed it. The market was still hot. We got a good offer. At the closing, Sarah sat across from me, hair perfectly blown out, makeup flawless, smile brittle. She signed where she needed to, eyes flicking to mine occasionally like she was waiting for me to break down. I didn't. As part of the settlement, every remaining debt and asset was peeled apart and reassigned. The mortgage was gone with the sale. The car loan stayed where it had always legally lived, in her name. When the proceeds hit the escrow account, Melissa sent me a breakdown. After paying off the mortgage, fees, and a few lingering joint debts, there was a decent chunk left. We split it down the middle per the agreement. Sarah texted me when the wire hit her account. So that's it. 10 years and we just split it like a business transaction. I looked at the number on my screen, then at my smaller, quieter apartment around me. I thought about every unpaid emotional invoice I'd carried. The answer came easy. That's what you negotiated, I wrote back. This is just us settling accounts. No reply. I heard through mutual friends that a few months after the divorce was finalized, Sarah's car got repossessed. She missed too many payments. She refinanced it into a new loan in her name alone at some ugly rate, and the math had finally done what math does. Jenna told me in a hesitant voice over coffee one afternoon. I don't want to sound like I'm gloating, she said, but she called me in tears when they took the car. What did you say? I asked. I told her I was sorry, Jenna said. And then I told her that this is what happens when you don't respect the person who's been quietly keeping the wheels on your life. I nodded, hard lesson. She also said, Jenna went on grimacing, that she didn't realize how expensive freedom is. Her words. I almost smiled, not at her hardship, at the accidental honesty. Yeah, I said, bills are funny like that. As for Dan, they flamed bright and burned out fast. 2 intense months, a lot of filtered photos, then he ghosted her according to one of her overshares. Men are trash, she posted one day. I didn't hit like. 6 months after I left the house, I met someone. Not through an app, not through friends. At the gym of all places, which is cliché but true. Her name was Maya. She was in town finishing a grad program in physical therapy. We reached for the same set of dumbbells at the same time. I pulled back, she laughed. We made the usual small talk. The thing that caught me wasn't her smile, though that was nice. It was the way she talked, direct, no jargon, no performative self-awareness, just present. We started spotting each other, then grabbing coffee afterward. Then one Saturday, as we were walking out to the parking lot, she said, "Hey, some of my friends and I are going to Hocking Hills next weekend. Cabin, hiking, nothing wild. You in?" Yeah, I said, surprising myself with how easily it came out. Sounds good. I should get your number, she said, so we can coordinate. We swapped phones, she typed. Later that night my messages pinged. Hey, it's Maya. Here's the cabin info. Also, if you ever need to bail and the group vibe is weird, tell me and we'll make an excuse. I smiled at that, thoughtful, aware. The night before the trip, she texted again. Heading out around 5 tomorrow. I'll grab you at 4:30. I'll let you know when I'm on my way. I stared at that last sentence for a second. I hadn't asked her to send it. It was just baked into how she operated. Basic courtesy. The trip was good, easy. At one point on a hike, Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, typed a quick reply. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, my mom just wanted to make sure we got here safe, she said. Then, without prompting, I always try to text her when I get where I'm going. She worries. Does she call that controlling? I asked, half joking, half not. Maya snorted. No, she calls it being a decent human. Why? I shrugged. Old stuff. She studied my face. You don't have to tell me, she said, but if you want to, I'll listen. Later, by the fire pit, I did tell her. Not everything. Enough. About being called controlling for asking for texts. About Dan. About hotel receipts and invoices, metaphorical and literal. She listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't immediately diagnose or self-reference. When I finished, she poked the fire with a stick. Wanting your partner to text you when they're out late isn't controlling, she said. I'd call that bare minimum consideration. That's how I felt, I said. Sounds like she learned a bunch of therapy words and used them as a shield so she'd never have to look in a mirror, Maya said. That's one way to put it, I said. Well, she added, leaning back, for what it's worth, if we ever date and I'm out late, you can text me and ask where I am. Is that you asking me out? I asked, smiling. Maybe, she said, smiling back, you projecting. I laughed, full and real. For the first time, the word didn't feel like a weapon. We started dating a few weeks later, slowly, intentionally. I told her up front I was fresh out of a marriage and in no hurry to sprint toward another aisle. She nodded and said, "Cool. I'm not auditioning for a ring. I'm auditioning for peace." We matched temperature. People ask me sometimes when I tell this story on late nights with too much beer if I ever miss Sarah. Not her specifically, usually, but the idea of us. The history. I miss who I thought she was. I miss the version of myself that still believed we were on the same team. I don't miss my phone lighting up at 2 in the morning with a notification saying, "Don't wait up," like that was supposed to substitute for respect. I keep my keys on a small hook by the door now. I make my coffee the way I like it and rinse my mug when I feel like it. I answer texts from people who mean their words. I don't spin stories in my head about how someone might change if I just love them a little harder. I asked who Dan was. She called me insecure and controlling. Turns out I wasn't insecure. I was informed. And the only thing I'd really been controlling was how long I stayed in a house where my own needs were treated like a diagnosis. I let go, she got her freedom, I got my peace. Different invoices, paid in full.